Listen up, because what I'm about to tell you is not just another celebrity breakup sob story. Oh no, this one has enough twists, turns, and jaw-dropping receipts to make a Netflix limited series look like a bedtime story. Picture this: one of hip-hop's most respected pioneers, the lyrical powerhouse, the queen of bars herself, MC Lyte, steps into what looked like a fairy tale marriage, only for the plot to spiral into whispers of betrayal, double lives, and straight-up scandal. And the question that's burning in everyone's mind: was she living with a man who had two faces, two lives, and maybe even two bank accounts? I mean, come on. How does a marriage that started with a Montego Bay Paradise wedding crash and burn faster than a reality show couple who met on day 2 of filming? Was it infidelity? Was it a money grab? Or was it something far more sinister? The kind of thing tabloids only dream about printing? Because let me tell you, the rumors floating around make daytime soap operas look tame. And here's the kicker: if even half of these claims are true, we are not just talking about a failed marriage. We're talking about one of the biggest double-life exposés the hip-hop world has ever seen. So buckle up. Grab your popcorn, because this ride is about to get bumpy, messy, and maybe just a little too real. Do you want me to continue and expand this into the full section 1? Introducing the scandal in the same viral YouTube script style. So let us rewind to where this storm really begins, because MC Lyte was never supposed to be caught up in this kind of circus. She was the icon who set the bar for women in hip-hop, the one who was praised for keeping her head straight in an industry designed to chew people up and spit them out. And yet when love came knocking at her door, it arrived dressed in the form of John Wyche, a man she reportedly met on Match.com, who seemed like the dream she never knew she wanted. And when the two tied the knot, in 2017, at a lavish Montego Bay ceremony, the pictures told a story of paradise, but what no one realized was that paradise was already cracking at the seams. Insiders whispered that even before the honeymoon was over, there were signs that something was not right, and that the man Lyte thought she was marrying was not the man she was actually getting behind closed doors. It was said that Wyche was juggling another world entirely, a double life, so carefully constructed that even the sharpest eyes in her circle missed it until it was too late. People close to the couple hinted that their separation only 5 months after marriage was not just about irreconcilable differences as the legal papers would suggest, but about layers of lies. Unraveling at lightning speed, whispers spread that Lyte would come home to find her husband mysteriously absent for long stretches, giving vague excuses about business trips and family emergencies. The same stories he repeated so often they began to sound like rehearsed scripts. One friend who claimed to have seen it up close described it as like living with an actor who never came out of character. Every story had a hole, every explanation led to another question, and the tension in their home was said to be unbearable. Yet Lyte, the eternal optimist, tried to put on the brave face, determined not to let her fans or her family see the cracks forming in the perfect image she had so proudly displayed after all. How do you tell people who flew halfway across the world to watch your fairy tale wedding that the dream was dissolving before their very eyes? And how do you admit that the man who smiled beside you in photographs might be smiling for someone else entirely? Reports began surfacing that Wyche was seen in places where he had no reason to be spending money that no one could trace back to his own income, and even entertaining company that had nothing to do with his marriage. These were not just harmless dinners or casual outings either. Some alleged he maintained a second apartment, one that Lyte never set foot in, and that he used this secret space to entertain in ways that could only deepen the sting of betrayal. Others claimed that financial records revealed transactions that did not line up with the modest lifestyle he portrayed, and when confronted, he allegedly deflected, turned defensive, or flipped the script to make Lyte feel as though she was imagining things. This cycle of doubt and deception created a storm of confusion and pain, leaving Lyte caught between believing in the vows she made and recognizing that the man beside her might have been performing a role all along. Meanwhile, the public remained in the dark, blissfully double-tapping wedding photos on Instagram and commenting on how happy they looked together, unaware that behind those smiles lay a silence heavy enough to choke out love altogether. Some say the reason the divorce papers were filed in 2020 was not because the issues suddenly appeared, but because they had reached a boiling point after years of trying to patch a sinking ship. Lyte allegedly reached the end of her rope when yet another rumor surfaced, this time about infidelity with a woman who supposedly confronted her directly with messages and photographs. If that was not enough to shatter her resolve, there were also allegations that Witch had been plotting financial moves behind her back, though Lyte has since publicly denied that he ever tried. To take her assets, the smoke surrounding those rumors was too thick to ignore. Perhaps it was simply the cruel reality of marriage under the microscope. Every rumor, every whisper, and every speculation cuts deeper than the last, and the woman who once stood as a symbol of strength was suddenly seen as vulnerable, raw, and exposed. This was not just about divorce anymore, it was about betrayal at the deepest level. It was about realizing that while you were celebrating a union with your entire soul, the other half of that union might have been entertaining a secret life that had nothing to do with you. It is said that Lyte was completely distraught in the early stages, that she spiraled between moments of desperate hope that it could be fixed and waves of crushing realization that it never would be. Friends say she tried to hold on for appearances, she tried to keep the faith for family and fans, but there comes a moment when the truth refuses to stay hidden, when the masks fall, and the performance collapses, and that is exactly what happened here. The man who had stood beside her in Jamaica, under the sunlit skies promising forever, was suddenly a stranger cloaked in lies, and the truth, once it surfaced, was impossible to push back into the shadows, and that is where the scandal truly takes shape. The unraveling of this marriage did not just happen behind closed doors, it began to spill out into the public like ink on white fabric, spreading until everyone could see the stain, and once the tabloids got a whiff of the rumors, they ran with it, painting John Wyche as a master manipulator who had somehow managed to fool not only MC Lyte, but also an entire audience of fans who thought they were watching a fairy tale. Story of love and redemption play out. The whispers of a double life grew louder as so-called leaked reports surfaced, claiming that Wyche was funneling money into accounts that Lyte never knew existed, anonymous insiders who swore they were close. To the situation described lavish parties in hidden spots where Lyte was never invited, and where Wyche reportedly played the role of a single man. Without hesitation, one alleged source painted a scene of him arriving in expensive cars surrounded by people who seemed to know him far too well, and flaunting an image completely at odds with the quiet, modest man he portrayed at home. Another insider claimed that there were photographs of him in compromising situations, though none ever made it to mainstream outlets. The mystery only intensified, because in the absence of proof, the rumors gained even more traction. It was like the less people saw, the more they believed. Because in the world of celebrity gossip, absence of evidence often feels like confirmation, and the public loves nothing more than to fill in the blanks with their own imaginations. Fans who once celebrated Lyte's wedding now turned into detectives, piecing together timelines, comparing outfits and photographs, and dissecting social media posts for clues. One viral thread on Twitter suggested that Wyche's Instagram stories often featured locations far away from where Lyte was performing, making people ask who was he really spending his time with and why. Were his explanations so vague, the story grew into a full-blown soap opera, with fans taking sides, some blaming Lyte for ignoring the red flags, and others accusing Wyche of being a con artist who targeted her fame and fortune from the start. There was even a rumor that he was preparing to launch some kind of business venture using connections he made during the marriage, and that he intended to use Lyte's name as a springboard into credibility. The irony was too bitter to ignore. While she was fighting to protect her catalog, her assets, and her reputation, the man she once trusted might have been scheming to leverage her brand for his own gain. The press ate up, running headlines about betrayal and secret lives, and every time Lyte tried to remain quiet, it only made the speculation louder. Talk shows debated the scandal like it was a national crisis, with some hosts joking that Wyche had pulled a Tinder swindler move, while others shook their heads at the tragedy of watching a woman who had given her all end up with someone who allegedly gave so little. The Breakfast Club interview, where Lyte finally spoke openly about the pain of the divorce, only added fuel to the fire, because while she denied that Wyche tried to take her money, she admitted how emotionally draining the process had been, and fans latched onto that as proof that there was more to the story than she was willing to reveal. Online chatter suggested that perhaps Lyte was protecting herself legally by keeping details vague, while others believed she simply wanted to preserve her dignity and not air every sordid detail in public. Either way, the Ihwai narrative of Wyche as the villain only grew stronger with each rumor and every mysterious post. But the scandal was not limited to money and infidelity alone. It took on a darker edge when anonymous bloggers began to hint at ties to questionable business dealings, whispers of shady investments, offshore accounts, and even connections to circles that thrived in secrecy. None of these claims were substantiated, yet the internet does not need solid evidence to spin a tale. Once a rumor has legs, it runs at lightning speed, and soon enough there were YouTube channels dedicated to dissecting every detail of Lyte's alleged double life. Some claimed he lived like a completely different person when he was away from Lyte, describing him as a smooth talker with a taste for luxury and a network of acquaintances who treated him like a man of means. The contradiction between his modest presentation in the marriage and his alleged high-flying escapades only deepened the sense of betrayal. What about the reactions of those in Lyte's inner circle? Reports suggested that her closest friends were both protective and furious. One unnamed friend supposedly told a blogger that they had warned Lyte something was off from the beginning. But she had been swept up by the romance and the hope of finally having stability. Another insider claimed that Queen Latifah, who has always been tied to Lyte in both friendship and rumor, was particularly upset by the way things turned out because she valued loyalty above everything and hated seeing her friend endure humiliation. The fans, of course, devoured these tidbits, turning every anonymous quote into gospel and turning every denial from Lyte into a puzzle piece that needed decoding. Scandal became less about two people and more about the spectacle. The audience that once celebrated Lyte's wedding photos now dissected them with the precision of crime scene analysts, pointing out stiff smiles, awkward poses, and eyes that did not seem to tell the story of happiness anymore. Conspiracy theories grew about whether the marriage had been doomed from the start, whether Lyte married Lyte for clout, whether she married him to silence whispers about her sexuality, or whether the whole thing was a carefully constructed image gone horribly wrong. No one really knew, but everyone had an opinion, and the louder the voices grew, the harder it became to separate truth from theater. By the time the divorce proceedings dragged on into their third year, the scandal had taken on a life of its own. It was no longer about paperwork or property division. It was about the story of a hip-hop legend caught in the web of deception. It was about the audience needing answers to questions that maybe could never be fully answered. And it was about the painful truth that the people we put on pedestals are still human, still vulnerable, and still capable of getting entangled in the kind of messy heartbreak that feels all too familiar, yet amplified 1,000 times under the spotlight. And as the noise grew louder, the silence from Lyte and Lyte grew heavier, until it seemed like the only way this saga could end was with an explosion of truth that no one would be ready for. The dust from the rumors settled. It became clear that the fallout from MC Lyte's marriage and divorce was only beginning. The whispers of a double life had grown into a roaring conversation that spanned social media, talk shows, and celebrity. Gossip columns alike, and everywhere you looked, people were asking the same question. How could a woman who had built an empire on her talent and intellect end up entangled in a web of secrecy and betrayal? The public reaction was intense. Fans flooded. Comment sections debating whether Lyte was truly a villain or whether this was just the messy reality of human relationships. Some argued that Lyte had been naive, others insisted she had been too trusting, and still others speculated that this entire saga was proof that even icons are not immune to heartbreak. Amidst the frenzy, there were calls for accountability, with some commentators joking that Lyte should be investigated like a corporate criminal, while others seriously questioned whether legal action had been considered against any alleged financial misconduct. And although Lyte has always maintained that her assets were safe thanks to a prenuptial agreement, the mere mention of hidden accounts, lavish spending, and secretive behavior kept people on edge. Industry insiders began weighing in, offering their own takes on what had happened. Some framed it as a cautionary tale about the perils of fame and the challenges of trusting in high-profile relationships. Others suggested that this story exposed the way rumors and speculation can amplify reality into something almost unrecognizable. The narrative grew so large that even celebrities who were friends or acquaintances of Lyte and Lyte could not escape commentary on their silence or perceived reactions, and every small gesture in public appearances was scrutinized, from the way Lyte smiled at interviews to the way Lyte carried himself at events. Both were analyzed for hidden meaning, and the public consumed it all like a serialized drama where every episode was followed with bated breath. Meanwhile, the legal process moved slowly, and the delays only added to the tension. Observers pointed out that the divorce taking years to finalize allowed rumors to fester and conspiracy theories to multiply. The notion that Lyte had been reluctant to sign papers or negotiate in good faith created a storyline in which Lyte was the wronged party fighting against time, deception, and perhaps even manipulation. And throughout it all, Lyte's own words provided just enough insight to keep audiences guessing. She spoke of phases of grief and realization of what truly matters, emphasizing that holding on is not always an act of love, but sometimes of ego. And as people dissected her interviews and social media posts, the suspense intensified, with each carefully chosen phrase fans and critics alike speculated about what she might really mean, what had been left unsaid, and how the truth might differ from the story presented publicly. The cultural impact of the scandal extended beyond Lyte and Wyche themselves. It sparked broader conversations about trust, privacy, and the pressures faced by women in the music industry, particularly those who have to navigate fame, financial independence, and personal relationships simultaneously. Commentators linked the story to larger discussions about the vulnerability of female artists to exploitation and the challenges of balancing personal happiness. With public scrutiny and as more narratives emerged online, the saga became almost mythic in scale, portraying Lyte as a resilient figure who, despite being betrayed, maintained her dignity and controlled her own narrative wherever possible. It also painted Wyche in the archetypal role of the deceiver, the man living in two worlds, with one foot in charm and one foot in secrecy, a dynamic that gave the public endless fodder for debate and speculation. By the time the divorce was officially finalized, the conversation had evolved into a broader dialogue about celebrity, deception, and the price of trust. The story had captured attention because it combined elements everyone finds compelling: betrayal, secrecy, wealth, and the unraveling of a seemingly perfect relationship in the public eye. The saga illustrated how appearances can be deceiving and how carefully curated images, whether in photographs, social media posts, or public appearances, can conceal complex and sometimes painful truths beneath the surface. For Lyte, the conclusion of the legal battle marked a turning point, a moment of reclaiming personal agency and asserting that despite the heartbreak, the focus would now be on growth, music, and life beyond the shadow of scandal. The lessons resonated with audiences who saw in her experience a mirror of the risks inherent in love, fame, and human vulnerability. And as the dust settled and the gossip eventually quieted, what remained was the undeniable truth that Lyte had navigated one of the most turbulent chapters of her personal life with intelligence, strength, and resilience, earning her not only respect as an artist, but admiration as a woman who refused to let deceit define her future. So, what do you think about all of this? Was John Wyche really living a secret double life? Or is this just another case of celebrity rumors running wild? Could MC Lyte have seen it coming? Or was it truly a shock from start to finish? And what about trust, loyalty, and love? How do we even begin to navigate relationships when the people we care about might be hiding entire worlds from us? We want to hear your thoughts, your theories, and your take on this scandal. Did you see any signs that this marriage was doomed? Or do you think the whole situation was blown out of proportion by social media and gossip blogs? Drop your opinions in the comments below and don't hold back, because every theory, every insight, and even every wild guess counts. And if you're hooked on stories like this, make sure to hit that like button to show your support. Subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss the latest breaking revelations from the world of music, celebrities, and jaw-dropping scandals. Share this video with friends who love a good controversy and want to be in the know. Remember, the truth is always stranger than fiction, and we'll keep bringing it straight to you.